My name is Evelyn Ross. I'm 58 years old. And for the last 20 years, I've lived a life most people only dream of, but no one around me ever knew. Not even my own son. To him, I was just mom. The woman who wore old cardigans, cooked simple meals, and took the bus to work every morning. He never once asked what I actually did for a living. And I never told him. Why would I? I wasn't the kind of person who flaunted money. In a world obsessed with showing off, I preferred silence, and silence, my dear, is the loudest form of power. You see, I earned $40,000 a month as a corporate director. I made decisions that affected thousands of employees. I signed contracts that could change lives. But when I came home at night, I still reheated leftovers, wore worn-out shoes, and watched old movies on my couch. Because I wanted to stay grounded. I didn't want my son, Ryan, to grow up spoiled, or to think money could replace values. So, I lived modestly. He thought I was a secretary, an ordinary woman with an ordinary paycheck. He was wrong. And the day I found out how wrong he, and his new family, were, everything changed. It started with a phone call. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because it was raining, and I was finishing a video call with a foreign client when my phone buzzed. Mom, Ryan's voice said, a little too careful. I wanted to ask you something. He always sounded like that when he was nervous. Yes, honey? I asked, trying to sound cheerful. He hesitated. So. Melissa's parents are visiting from Singapore. They'd love to meet you. We're having dinner this Saturday at Le Pavillon, you know, the French restaurant downtown. Le Pavillon. One of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I smiled into the phone. That sounds lovely. But something about his tone bothered me. There was no excitement, no warmth. Just tension. Is something wrong? I asked. No, it's fine, he said quickly. Just, please, Mom. Don't overthink it. Just be yourself, okay? Be myself? That phrase hung in the air like smoke. I knew exactly what he meant. He didn't want me to embarrass him. To him, and probably to Melissa's parents, I was just an aging woman with a small job, someone who lived in a modest apartment. I stared at my reflection in the window, my own tired eyes looking back at me. Of course, Ryan, I said quietly. I'll be there. When the call ended, I sat still for a long time. That night, I walked through my apartment, the same one I'd lived in for 25 years. The same sofa. The same clock on the wall. Nothing looked expensive. Nothing screamed wealth. It was all part of my choice. My disguise. And that's when the idea struck me. If Ryan and his wife's family thought I was poor, why not show them exactly that? Why not give them what they wanted to see, a woman who had nothing, who looked out of place, who didn't belong in their glittering world? I'd seen too many people treat others differently once they thought they were better. And I needed to know, how deep did that arrogance go? So I made a decision. On Saturday night, I wouldn't walk into that restaurant as Evelyn Ross, the powerful corporate director who made 6 figures. I'd walk in as the poor mother they expected me to be. Saturday came faster than I expected. I opened my closet and smiled bitterly at the irony. Rows of elegant suits and tailored dresses I wore to board meetings, and I chose none of them. Instead, I pulled out an old gray dress. Wrinkled, faded, a little too big. The kind of dress that says, she tried her best. I tied my hair into a messy bun. No makeup. No jewelry. Not even a watch. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the woman who managed million-dollar projects. I saw someone forgotten. Someone invisible. Perfect. As my taxi pulled up to the restaurant, I felt that strange mix, sadness and excitement. Sadness, because no mother wants to discover her child's shame. Excitement, because a part of me already knew this night would reveal the truth. The restaurant glowed with gold light. A doorman in white gloves opened the door. The scent of expensive wine and perfume filled the air. I stepped in, and saw them. Ryan stood at the far end of the room, near a long table by the window. He was in a navy suit, his posture stiff. When he saw me, his expression froze. He looked at me from head to toe, my old shoes, my plain dress, and for a moment, I saw it. The flicker of embarrassment. "Mom, you came," he said, his voice too tight. Of course, I smiled gently. I wouldn't miss it. Beside him stood Melissa, my daughter-in-law. Beautiful, confident, but tonight, her smile was strained. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, cold and polite. "Hi, Mrs. Ross. You look nice." Her eyes said something else entirely. Then she turned to her parents. "Mom, Dad, this is Evelyn, Ryan's mother." Her parents stood to greet me. Gloria and Patrick Tan. Both perfectly dressed, dripping with quiet wealth. Gloria wore a silk emerald dress and diamond earrings that probably cost more than my car. Patrick's silver watch caught the light like a trophy. Gloria extended her hand. "A pleasure," she said with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "The pleasure's mine," I replied softly. Her handshake was limp. Cold. Dismissive. They didn't offer me a seat. So I quietly pulled one out myself, the one at the far end of the table. As the waiter handed out menus, I noticed the subtle glances between them. Ryan looked nervous. Melissa avoided my eyes. Gloria glanced at my faded purse like it was an insult to her entire bloodline. She broke the silence first. "Would you like help choosing, Evelyn? The menu's all in French." I smiled shyly. "Oh, yes please. I'm not very good with fancy restaurants." She nodded. "Don't worry, I'll order for you. Something simple, nothing too extravagant." I caught the tone. That single word, extravagant, was a dagger wrapped in sugar. Patrick chuckled. "It's good to keep things within budget, isn't it?" Ryan's jaw tightened. Melissa looked down at her napkin. "And me?" I just smiled and nodded. "Yes," I said. "It's always wise to save where we can." But inside, I was taking notes. Every word. Every gesture. Every insult hidden behind politeness. Because they thought I was poor. And that gave them permission, in their minds, to look down on me. The dinner dragged on. Gloria talked endlessly about their travels, London, Paris, Tokyo, sprinkling the prices of everything she mentioned like seasoning. "This wine," she said proudly, "is from a vineyard in France, $200 a bottle, but worth every sip." I nodded humbly. "That's lovely. I usually just buy mine from the supermarket." Her smile faltered, just for a second. Ryan cleared his throat, trying to change the topic. "Mom, how's work?" "Oh, same as always," I said lightly. "Still doing paperwork and filing things." Gloria raised a brow. "Ah, so you're in administration?" "That's good. Honest work." "Honest. As if everything else was dishonest." I smiled. "Yes. Honest." What she said next made me realize exactly what kind of woman she was. She leaned forward, resting her chin delicately on her manicured hand. "You know, Evelyn," she began sweetly, "Ryan and Melissa are doing quite well. They just bought a house in the suburbs. We helped them with the down payment, of course. And the honeymoon, too. It's what parents do when they can." There it was. The subtle blow. I tilted my head. "That's wonderful," I said softly. "I'm sure they're very grateful." Gloria's eyes gleamed. "Oh, they are. You must be proud too, even if you couldn't contribute much financially." Melissa's eyes widened in horror. Ryan's face turned crimson. "Mom," he began, but I cut him off with a small smile. "It's all right, darling. Your mother-in-law is right." I folded my napkin carefully. Everyone gives what they can. But inside, I was boiling. Not with shame. With clarity. Because I now knew exactly what this dinner was. It wasn't an introduction. It was an evaluation. And to them, I was failing. I decided right then, I would let them finish their little performance. Let them believe they'd measured me. Let them think I was small. Because when the truth finally came out, it wouldn't just change their opinions. It would shatter them. The waiter cleared the plates. The soft murmur of expensive laughter filled the air. But at our table, there was only one sound, Gloria's voice. She had been talking nonstop for nearly 20 minutes. About investments. About financial discipline. About how her daughter and son-in-law needed to maintain stability. Every word was sugar-coated, but I could taste the bitterness beneath. And I was beginning to see her game. She wasn't here to meet me. She was here to judge me. Patrick sat beside her, silent but approving. The kind of man who lets his wife do the talking, nodding at all the right times. Ryan kept fidgeting, his shoulders stiff. Melissa looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. But Gloria, she was in her element. Performing. Smiling. Dismantling me, piece by piece, with polite cruelty. So, Evelyn, she said sweetly, cutting into her steak with surgical precision. Do you live alone? Yes, I said. I've been on my own for a long time. Oh, that must be challenging, she said, feigning sympathy. Especially with your kind of salary. You must be very careful with expenses. I manage, I replied softly. Her lips curved into a condescending smile. That's admirable. I always tell Melissa that some people have to be resourceful when money's tight. Ryan flinched. Melissa's hand tightened around her napkin. But Gloria wasn't done. She was just getting started. You know, she continued, swirling her wine, Patrick and I have always believed that success should be shared. When Melissa and Ryan got married, we helped them, down payment, honeymoon, even furniture. Because that's what family does when it can afford to. She said it casually, like it was a fact, not an insult. I nodded. That's very generous of you. Gloria smiled. And you, dear, were you able to help Ryan in any way when he got married? The question landed like a slap. I looked down at my plate, pretending to be embarrassed. Not much, I said quietly. Just a small gift. Her eyes gleamed. Oh, that's sweet. Every little bit counts, right? Patrick chuckled softly. Of course. Even a little help is still help. Their laughter was polite. Controlled. But underneath, I could hear it, the mockery. Ryan tried to intervene. Mom, let's talk about something else. But Gloria waved her manicured hand. No, Ryan. We're just having a conversation. I think it's important that we're all open here. Then she leaned forward. Her tone softened, dangerously. Evelyn, I wanted to ask you something. You're not getting any younger, and I imagine living alone can be, well, lonely. Financially stressful, even. So Patrick and I were thinking, maybe we could help you. I blinked slowly. Help me? She smiled, as if offering me charity. Yes. We could send you a small allowance each month. Something modest, of course, just enough so you can live comfortably without Ryan worrying about you. I stared at her. She truly believed she was being noble. How thoughtful, I murmured. And in return? Her expression didn't change. Oh, nothing much. We'd just appreciate it if you gave the kids a little more space. Let them focus on their marriage. You know, less interference. The table went silent. Melissa looked horrified. Ryan's face turned pale. Mom, that's... Gloria raised a hand. Ryan, please. I'm only being practical. Your mother understands, don't you, Evelyn? I took a slow breath. I could feel my pulse steadying, not racing. I wasn't angry. I was calm. Because anger makes you blind, but calm? Calm makes you powerful. I just want to understand, I said softly. How much did you have in mind? Gloria blinked, caught off guard. Well, we were thinking, perhaps $500. Maybe $700 a month. Enough for small comforts. I nodded thoughtfully. So, $700, for me to stay out of my son's life? Her face tightened. That's not what I said. Oh, but that's what you meant, I replied gently. You want to buy distance. To make me invisible. Patrick cleared his throat. Now, hold on. That's not fair. We're trying to help. Help, I repeated slowly. Like you helped with the down payment? How much was that, again? Gloria hesitated. Around $35,000. Ah, and the honeymoon? 15,000, she said proudly. So roughly $50,000 total. Yes, she said, straightening up. We believe in investing in our children's happiness. I nodded, smiling faintly. That's wonderful. But tell me something, Gloria, has all that money bought you peace of mind? She frowned. I beg your pardon? Has it bought you love? Respect? Or just control? Her mouth fell open slightly. Patrick set his fork down. Evelyn, I think that's enough. I leaned back in my chair, still calm, still smiling. You know, Gloria, I've been listening to you all night. And do you know what I realized? People who talk the most about money usually understand it the least. Ryan whispered, Mom, but I lifted a hand. No, sweetheart. Let's finish this dinner properly. I looked at Gloria again, really looked. The diamonds. The perfect hair. The flawless skin. All armor. All performance. You said earlier that you admire women who fight alone, I continued. That we're brave. So tell me, Gloria, have you ever fought alone? She blinked. Of course. I've worked hard my whole life. Managing what your husband earned? I interrupted softly. Or building something from scratch with your own hands? Her face reddened. I don't see why that matters. It matters, I said, because there's a difference between spending money and making it. Between overseeing an empire and building one. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. For the first time that night, Gloria didn't have a comeback. Ryan looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. Melissa's eyes were wide with tears. I stood up slowly. You wanted to offer me $700 for my silence, I said quietly. But you've already shown me something worth much more, the truth about who you are. I placed my napkin gently on the table. Enjoy your dinner. And with that, I turned and walked out. Outside, the cold air hit my face. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing slowly, watching the city lights blur. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just thought. How strange it is that the people who believe they're above others are usually standing on the weakest ground. But something inside me had shifted. For years, I had hidden who I was, out of modesty, out of protection. But that night, I realized something important. Silence protects the humble. But sometimes, silence also empowers the arrogant. And I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. The night after the dinner, I sat in my small apartment, staring at the reflection in my window. The city lights glittered below, 1,000 tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet. I should have been angry. I should have been humiliated. But instead, I felt clear. Gloria had finally shown me who she was, and in doing so, she'd also reminded me who I was. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old, leather folder. It smelled like dust and memory. Inside were a few documents, property deeds, investment certificates, company shares. All of them under a name Gloria had never heard before, E.M. Hayes Holdings. My initials. My company. My creation. 20 years ago, before Ryan was even married, I had started a small interior design business, Evelyn May Interiors. It began in my garage with one client. Then 2. Then 20. Eventually, I rebranded under a holding company to manage my investments quietly. My accountant had suggested it: keep your personal life separate, Evelyn. It's safer that way. And so, EM Hayes Holdings grew, quietly, invisibly. By the time Gloria was bragging about her designer handbags, I had already bought 3 rental properties, 2 cafes, and a stake in a local architecture firm. But no one knew. Not even Ryan. Because money was never the goal. Freedom was. I remembered Gloria's offer: we could send you a small allowance each month. I laughed softly to myself. If only she knew that the restaurant where she'd humiliated me was owned by my company. The irony was poetic. The next morning, I decided it was time. Not for revenge. For revelation. I called my financial advisor, Jordan. Can you arrange a meeting with the Lennox Group? I asked. Of course, he said. But, may I ask why? You haven't spoken to them in years. Because it's time they met the silent partner they'd been bragging about. He chuckled. Ah. You mean the mystery investor that Gloria Lennox keeps mentioning at her charity events? I smiled. Yes. That one. 2 days later, I walked into the Lennox Group headquarters, the glass tower that bore their family name. The receptionist's eyes widened when I introduced myself. Good morning, I'm here to see Mrs. Lennox. Tell her that Mrs. Evelyn Hayes has arrived. Within minutes, Gloria appeared in the lobby, surprised, maybe a little annoyed. Evelyn? What on earth are you doing here? I smiled politely. Business. Business, she repeated, confused. Yes. I believe we're partners. Her brows furrowed. I'm sorry, what? I gestured toward the executive elevators. Perhaps we should talk privately. When we reached the top floor, her husband Patrick was waiting. He looked uneasy, as if he already suspected something. I placed a folder on the polished table and opened it slowly. These are the original investment papers from EM Hayes Holdings. 20% equity in Lennox Developments. Signed by Patrick himself, 12 years ago. Gloria's face drained of color. That's impossible, she whispered. That company, that's mine, I said gently. I used my business holdings to invest quietly. Patrick probably thought I was just another investor back then. But every project you've built since then, every property, every profit, I've been part of it. Patrick swallowed hard. Evelyn, why didn't you ever say anything? Because I didn't need to, I said simply. Until your wife decided I needed her charity. Gloria's lips trembled. You're our silent partner? I nodded. The silent one, yes. But not the powerless one. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. For the first time, Gloria wasn't looking down at me. She was looking up. I closed the folder, tucked it under my arm, and smiled kindly. You wanted to offer me $700 to stay away from my son. But I think we both know which one of us could afford to disappear, and which one can't. Patrick exhaled shakily. Evelyn, I didn't realize. I know, I said. You never asked. I walked to the door, paused, and turned back. Oh, and Gloria? I said softly. Next time you dine at the Grey Lounge, you might want to thank the owner. Her eyes widened. You? Yes, I said, smiling. I own that restaurant, too. Then I left her standing there, pale, silent, and suddenly very small. When I stepped outside, the cold breeze carried a strange warmth. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not because I had power, but because I had finally used it with purpose. Gloria had built her world on appearances. I had built mine on silence. And now, Silence had spoken. That night, I called Ryan. "Mom?" His voice was soft, cautious. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "I just wanted you to know, I'm fine. And you don't have to defend me anymore." He hesitated. "What happened?" "Nothing you need to fix," I said. "Just a reminder that people who look down on others usually have the weakest foundations." There was a pause. Then he said, "I'm proud of you, Mom." My heart swelled. "No, Ryan. I'm proud of you. For standing up even when it wasn't easy." 2 weeks after that unforgettable meeting at the Lennox Group office, I sent out dinner invitations. Not a text. Not a call. An actual printed card, thick paper, gold lettering, simple words. "You are cordially invited to dinner at the Grey Lounge. Friday 7 p.m., hosted by Evelyn Hayes." I sent one to Ryan and Melissa. And one to Gloria and Patrick. I wanted them all there. Same restaurant. Different rules. Friday night arrived. The Grey Lounge gleamed with candlelight and quiet music. It was elegant, calm, the kind of place people whispered in. But tonight, there was no whispering. Because tonight, I had reserved the entire restaurant. When they walked in, Gloria froze at the entrance. Her eyes darted to the "closed for private event" sign. Ryan looked around in confusion. "Mom, did you rent the whole place?" I smiled. "Yes. I thought we could have a more private conversation this time." A waiter escorted them to the long, polished table at the center. Everything was immaculate: white roses, crystal glasses, silver cutlery. Gloria sat stiffly, her expression composed but wary. Patrick looked uncomfortable. Melissa, bless her, looked both amazed and terrified. As the waiter poured the wine, I noticed Gloria's hands trembling slightly. Good. She remembered this place. The same table where she'd once offered me $700 to stay away from my own son. How poetic, I thought. "Thank you all for coming," I began calmly. "I know the last dinner we shared didn't end well. I thought we might try again, under more honest circumstances." Ryan frowned. "Mom, what's going on?" I smiled. "You'll see." I gestured toward the waiter, who placed a leather folder in front of each of them, the same kind used for receipts. "Before we eat," I said softly, "I want you to look at something." They opened the folders one by one. Inside were copies of the Lennox Group investment documents, ownership papers, signed contracts, and property listings, all bearing my name. Gloria's face turned pale instantly. Patrick's mouth opened, then closed again. Ryan blinked in confusion. "Mom, what is this?" I looked at him gently. "These are my business holdings, sweetheart. I'm one of the principal investors in your in-law's company. Have been for over a decade." Silence. Melissa gasped quietly. "Wait, you own part of Lennox Group?" "Yes," I said. 20%, to be exact." "And this restaurant?" "It's mine, too." Ryan stared at me, stunned. You own this place?" I smiled faintly. "Yes." That's why the staff didn't seem surprised when I asked for the entire floor. Gloria was frozen. Her hands clutched the folder like it might disappear. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why hide all this?" "Because I didn't need to prove anything," I said quietly. "Until you decided I wasn't worthy of being in my own son's life." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I kept quiet out of humility. I continued. "I wanted Ryan and Melissa to build their lives on their own merit. But you turned my silence into your weapon. You mocked me. You tried to buy me off like a nuisance." Gloria's face reddened. I didn't mean it like that." Patrick looked down, ashamed. "You did," I said softly. "And that's all right. Because tonight isn't about revenge. It's about clarity." I stood up slowly and walked around the table, stopping beside Gloria. You've spent years teaching people to respect you because of what you own. But true respect isn't bought, it's earned in silence, in kindness, in patience. Her eyes glistened. Evelyn. I'm sorry. I nodded. Apologies are easy. Understanding is harder. I turned to Ryan and Melissa. My son, my daughter-in-law, I hid the truth because I wanted you to value character over comfort. Now that you know, I hope you remember this: wealth means nothing if it costs you kindness. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Hayes. I'm so sorry for how they treated you. I smiled. You have nothing to apologize for, dear. You've always been kind. Then I looked at Ryan. He looked broken, and proud all at once. Mom, he said softly, why didn't you ever tell me? I reached out, touching his hand. Because I wanted you to love me for who I was, not for what I owned. The dinner continued quietly after that. No insults. No lectures. Just the faint sound of cutlery and the weight of realization in the air. When dessert arrived, Gloria finally spoke again. Evelyn, she said carefully, I'd like to discuss how we move forward. Perhaps? I smiled gently. We move forward by treating each other with respect. That's all I ask. She nodded slowly. Of course. But I could see it in her eyes, she wasn't used to being humbled. And the humiliation was sinking in like a stain. As everyone rose to leave, I said one last thing. Oh, Gloria? She turned, her face tense. Next week, the Lennox Group Board is voting on a new project lead for your Riverside development, I said casually. I'll be attending that meeting. Her jaw tightened. You'll be attending? Yes, I said. As your equal. Then I smiled. A real smile, calm, gracious, final. And as she walked out, I saw something shift in her eyes. Not anger. Not fear. But the quiet, painful birth of respect. That night, after everyone left, I stayed back in the empty restaurant. The candles were still flickering, the city outside glittering like before. But this time I didn't feel small. I felt seen. Not because I had revealed my wealth, but because I had reclaimed my dignity. Some secrets protect you. Some teach others a lesson. And some, like this one, do both. Free from pretending. Free from hiding. Free from the weight of everyone's assumptions. That dinner changed everything, not just for me, but for my son, Ryan. And for his wife, Melissa, who couldn't look at her parents the same way again. The morning after. The next morning, my phone rang before sunrise. Ryan. He rarely called early unless it was important. Mom, his voice was soft, almost fragile. Can we talk? Alone? Of course, I said. Come by. An hour later, he arrived, not in his polished work suit, not with his confident stride. He looked like the boy I used to walk to school. When he stepped into my small apartment, the one he'd once thought of as too simple, he paused. His eyes swept across the old couch, the framed photos, the familiar smell of home. And then, suddenly, his face broke. He hugged me. Tightly. I'm so sorry, Mom. I held him, silent. Melissa told me everything, he continued. She's furious with her parents. She couldn't believe how they treated you. I didn't see it, Mom. I didn't see any of it. I smiled gently. Sometimes love blinds us to other people's intentions, son. It's not your fault. He shook his head. But it is. I was embarrassed by you. By your simplicity. I thought you didn't achieve enough. And now I find out you built an empire from scratch. You did it all for me. I touched his cheek. Ryan, my goal was never to impress you, it was to prepare you. Because one day, you'll realize the world respects not those who shout about success, but those who live it quietly. He nodded slowly. I think I finally understand that. An unexpected call. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Hayes," a man's voice said. "This is Mr. Turner, from the Lennox Group Board. We wanted to confirm your attendance for next week's meeting. You'll be presenting, correct?" "Presenting?" I repeated. "Yes," he said. "The board voted to nominate you for the new position, Executive Director for Global Projects. Gloria and Patrick both recommended you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Gloria recommended me?" "Yes, ma'am." She insisted. "Said the company needs leadership that understands both strength and humility." I hung up, still in disbelief. Gloria, the woman who once tried to pay me to disappear, had now vouched for my leadership. A week later. The boardroom was polished marble and glass overlooking the skyline. Gloria and Patrick were already seated when I arrived. When our eyes met, something unspoken passed between us, not friendship, but understanding. Gloria stood up. "Evelyn," she said softly, "I owe you an apology, not the polite kind. The real one." I stayed quiet. "You reminded me that money without grace means nothing. That success without humility is hollow. You taught me something that no business book ever could." Her voice trembled. "And for that, I'll always be grateful." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not arrogance anymore, but awareness. Perhaps pain is the only mirror that truly shows us who we are. I nodded. Apology accepted. The offer. The meeting began. They discussed figures, markets, and future plans. Then came the final vote. It was unanimous. I was officially appointed as the new executive director. When the applause ended, I stood and said something that silenced the room. "I appreciate this honor. But I will not accept the full salary." Everyone turned, stunned. I've lived my entire life with more than I ever needed. Instead, I want half my annual income to go toward a mentorship fund for single mothers, women who work quietly, just like I once did. Gloria's eyes filled with tears. "You really are extraordinary, Evelyn." I smiled. "No. I'm just finally using my power the right way." That evening, Ryan and Melissa joined me for dinner, this time at my apartment. No expensive table. No wine glasses. Just homemade soup, laughter, and peace. Melissa held my hand. "Your story changed how I see success, Mrs. Hayes. I want to teach my kids to live like you, humbly, but with strength." I smiled. "Then I've done my job." Ryan looked at me across the table. "Mom, can I ask something?" "Of course." He hesitated. "Now that they know who you really are, will you forgive them? Truly?" I leaned back, thinking for a long moment. The city lights flickered through the window, gentle and warm. "Forgiveness," I said finally, "isn't for them, it's for me. I spent too long living quietly in the shadows. I won't waste another moment on resentment. But I'll never forget, either. Because remembering keeps you humble, and humility is what keeps you powerful." The clock ticked softly. Outside, the world moved on, unaware that somewhere, in a quiet apartment, a woman who once pretended to be poor had just reclaimed not just her truth, but her peace. Real wealth isn't about how much you earn. It's about how much dignity you can afford to keep. Speech balloon. Now tell me. If someone humiliated you for your simplicity, and later begged for forgiveness, would you forgive them, or would you walk away? Backhand index pointing down. Comment your answer below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because Evelyn's next story might just be yours.